Welcome to Real Life with Jenny. My name is Jenny Sinaparatna. Grab your favorite drink, get a snack, and we will get started. Today, I have just white cheddar popcorn because there was no creativity left. and I'm actually drinking raspberry lemonade today. So let's just get a little bit wild and here we go. So let's get real. I live in a trailer court and it is a very unique place to live. It just is. But right now we are in the midst of road construction and they have been working on these roads for at least 4 years. I don't know, it feels like a decade. And they're doing it in chunks. Our area is completely done. We have a brand new road, which is fabulous, but half of the park does not. And so it is just a complete zoo around here. And it got me thinking because we do a lot of travel and we do a lot of weekends that we are on the road. And I have to tell you, if I was going to choose a time to be on the road, it would not be the weekends with everybody else that's heading out of town. But they say in Minnesota that there are two seasons. There's winter and road construction. Those are our two seasons. And it is so frustrating when you are driving along and all of a sudden the road stops. Like, have you been there? I was there last weekend or the weekend before. I don't even know anymore. We're driving along a road and it says, stop, road closed. And we're like, road closed? Like, where are we going to go? I know this road. And all of a sudden we took like a 20-minute detour. I am not kidding. Like, when you have driven for 4 hours at that point and it's a 20-minute detour, it feels like an eternity. It just is like, this is ridiculous. We will never find our way back. Luckily, it's an area that we knew very well. So we were able to find kind of some shortcuts and get back on the road after it was no longer closed and actually got into town in a very different way. But it is so frustrating to be driving along and all of a sudden there's a detour. And that is so reminiscent of our lives. Like, we have this plan and we're chucking along and we're looking for the promotion or we're looking for anything. And you're just moving along and you're saving money. Okay, so let's talk about money for just a minute. Like, this is something that I'm very passionate about, and we save our money so we can do our ministry, like, so we can do it as cheaply as possible. And then we love to travel, so we just save as much as we possibly can and put it away. And all of a sudden you like are having these plans. Our 30th anniversary is coming up in 3 years. And so you're putting money aside, kind of dreaming about where you want to go and what you want to do. And my daughter will be out of the house at that point and she'll be in college. And we're, kind of looking forward to like a fun trip with the two of us. And you're planning and you're moving that direction. And then all of a sudden, your furnace stops working. And in Minnesota, that's an important thing. Like, there is really not a lot in your house that is as important as your furnace, at least for me. And it was also our air conditioning. It's one unit. So it's the AC and the furnace. And they're like, yeah, it's on its last legs. And because we live in a trailer court, it is specialized. Like, it's not like you can call any local place and have them come in. In fact, I did, and they're like, yeah, we don't touch trailers. And I was like, and they call it manufactured homes. I mean, because they're fancy like that, and I'm not. I'm like, let's just be real. This is what we are. And so I'm like, Lord, like, this is a big blow to our budget. This is a detour. This is a detour from where we want to go. It is not necessarily what I want to spend our money on. And God was so gracious, and we found someone that we trusted, and, there's very few people that will do the work. It's been done. It's fabulous. In fact, we've turned on our air conditioning now just a couple times, and every time we're like freezing because I'm like, who knew the air conditioning could work this well? We've been living in the house for almost 25 years. It obviously wasn't working very well before. It was working very hard, and I appreciated the old AC, but this one is amazing. Like, it is super cold. Yay for Jenny, because she loves the cold. But it is so amazing that God used that detour to cool off our house better. And it is very hard when you're going along in life and you've got a goal and you're going for it and you're like, this is what I want, and a detour comes. And it feels devastating, right? It just feels like the end, because it's the end of the road at that point. It's the end of wherever you feel like you're going, and you take a detour. And then you get back to where you were, you kind of get back on your main road and you realize how important that detour was and how actually it brought a better sense of where you were going during that detour than you knew before. It is so incredible that God uses those detours in our lives. My daughter was reading in Exodus. She's kind of walking through Genesis and Exodus right now, and I'm sitting in my living room and she's up in the kitchen kind of just talking, and she talks a lot. She's a verbal processor, which I really appreciate, and she's processing through the Israelites leaving Egypt. And she was like, Mom, do you realize that sometimes God has to remove you from somewhere for you to appreciate his presence and who he is? And I was like, what? Like, I was just like, wow, that's really good. Sometimes God has to remove you from somewhere or something to realize his presence again. Because the Israelites did not know God's power and God's creativity and God's provision in Egypt. They did not have that experience until they got into the desert and they were walking around and they walked through the Red Sea and they saw God's provision and protection, and they walked and they got manna and God gave them honey and water and a cloud of fire and a cloud during the day. Like, it was amazing, God's provision in their lives. And they would have never experienced God in that way if they had stayed in Egypt. And so I just want to encourage you, whether you are swimming along just fine or all of a sudden you're on a detour that you never thought you'd get to. And you're like, Lord, I am not happy about this detour right now. I am feeling very much like road construction should not be happening in my life. And some of you, I know the journey that you're on. And I would agree. I don't want you on this road construction either. This is tough. This is hard. And I am not saying that it is easy to be detoured, but there's a purpose and a plan for it. And God has something better at the other end. And while you're on that detour and you are out walking through the desert, I pray that you will find God's provision, his creativity in this plan, and his love and peace. I just know that God has a plan for your life, even though right now you have no idea where you are. When I was on that detour, I have to tell you, there were places, I lived in that area for a year and a half, and I realize a year and a half is not a long time, but when you're in a small town, you do a lot of driving, and I had never been on any of these roads before. They were roads that I was like, I'm not sure they connect to anything else. In fact, our little GPS system was like, you are in the middle of a lake right now. Like, it had no idea where we were. There was no way for it to tell us how to get there. Oh, and you're there right now in your own life. And you're like, I'm not even on the map. Like, no one even knows where I am. I'm actually buried in quicksand. Jenny, this is not fun. This is not an adventure. And I want you to know that God sees you and he's walking on this detour with you, and he has a plan for better things. He has a plan for a better place than where you are right now. And I know that sometimes you just have to take time during that season and see God's provision in small things. Look around, and there were lakes that I saw on that tour, on that detour, that I've never seen before. And they were some of the most beautiful lakes I've ever seen. And I live in Minnesota. There are some really gorgeous lakes here. But there were some beautiful lakes that I was like, I never would have seen this before. I never would have driven off the path purposely to get to this lake. And it was just a moment that I was like, thank you, Lord, for this beauty that I would not have been able to see without it. And so look around sometimes in the midst of your chaos to see God's provision, and that he is continually to direct you, because God did not bring you on this detour to destroy you. You are not on this detour so your life cannot get better. It is not. God's purpose for your life is to give you a future and a hope. Like, that is his plan. When you look at Jeremiah 29:11, it says, I have plans for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. His plans are for good for you. They are to prosper you. They are not to harm you. And so just remember that this detour in your life is just that. It's a detour to get you back in the place that God has a bigger purpose and a bigger plan, and I'm excited for God to bring you there. Well, that's all I have for you this week. You can find me at Real Life with Jenny on Instagram, Facebook, and Be Real. You can also find me at christconnection.cc/Jen. Let's get excited. Let us just rejoice sometimes that God has to take us from Egypt to the desert for us to know his mighty power and to know his provision, his peace, and his love in a new way. And so as God takes you on a detour sometimes in your life, take that season and really learn who he is. Because sometimes we can get so comfortable where we are that we no longer rely on him. And so when you're in a season of a detour and life feels like it's crumbling around you, that is a great time to go, Lord, who are you? I want to see you in a new way, because I want to see you move miraculously in my life, because this is not where I want to stay, and I need you, Lord. Let's cry out to him and see what God can do. You all have a great week.